Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel on marketing for social distancing. And what we're going to discuss today are content and acquisition tips. So thank you all for joining. And maybe you all want to quickly introduce yourselves. I'm Laoura Salveta from 120 Advertising.
And I'm Charlotte Day from Contentworks Agency.
I'm Nicc.
Llan Azbel from Autochartist.
Yeah, Nicc from Expozive Marketing and Marcom.
I'm Panos Lamprakos from Google.
Marc, you're just on mute there at the moment.
Sorry, I am always some technical difficulties. I am Marc Hiney from AdRoll.
Thank you all for being here today. So we've got a very exciting panel. What I want to kick off with straight away is talking about, obviously COVID was quite a devastating time over the last 3 months. And sadly, there was negative news. However, online was absolutely buzzing with content, and that's what we're kind of here to talk about today. What the effects were from that was that a lot of FX brokers actually hugely benefited over this time, and we did have reports of Saxo back in March saying that they increased year on year by 54%. Maybe you can give us some comments on that between Marc. I have you're not on mute, so maybe you can.
Yeah, I'm happy to hop in there. But yeah, no, I think obviously the main trend is across the board. Everyone has noticed that the virus is devastating. That has been really great for the industry itself. Currently, AdRoll, for example, we work with over 80 brokers globally, and what we've seen across the board in kind of, I suppose, 80 to 90% of the cases is increased spend. I suppose there's never been a better time to acquire customers, and that's for a different range of reasons. The volatility means more people want to actually have a go at trading for the first time. CPMs are way down, which I'm sure we'll get into more detail later. So it's actually cheaper to run campaigns. And yeah, I think just as a general trend from what we've seen from all of the brokers we work with, whether it's in kind of EMEA, Cyprus, Asia, LATAM, even across the board, nearly all of them have increased their spend because they see this as a really good opportunity to acquire new customers that maybe before had no interest in trading. So yeah, that's, as an overall team, that's definitely one thing that we've seen. And in terms of data and spend, I think out of the 80 brokers, I'd say at least 50% of them have increased spend on kind of digital and programmatic and display campaigns with us. I'd be interested to hear if any of the other guys have seen similar trends.
Yeah, Panos. So did you see similar results?
Yeah, I mean, from our side, we could divide brokers in two main camps. The ones that did a moderate increase, something like in the range of 20 to 30% of their last year's spend, and brokers that went to an extreme increase of their budgets, doubling down on the current situation. So I cannot give you specific percentages, which camp presents, but we did see across the board an increase in overall in marketing spends. And the interesting thing was that it's not only in the current, so they did increase their presence in current channels used, for example, search, but some brokers started using new channels for acquisition. For example, they weren't using that much YouTube and online video, so they started going aggressively in this space, as well as we saw a lot of traction within apps as well. So advertisers not being that active in apps, going more aggressively under pursuing app audiences.
Yeah. One thing actually that I think is relevant to add there, guys, is that what we've noticed as well, it links nicely to the point Panos made, is that PPC now is actually so more competitive than ever, and it's obviously always a competitive. But as Panos said, people are using different channels to build out their audience and to make the most of this. So from our side, typically,
yeah, for example, what kind of channels are we seeing now that are different?
Yeah, so like say for example, I can only speak to what we see with our clients, but typically a lot of them would come to us for their retargeting to use their existing audience. But now obviously a lot of them would like to grow out that audience into new regions and acquire more users. So we've seen a huge amount of companies have a big uptake on brand awareness and kind of prospecting and lookalike campaigns. These type of campaigns are serving ads and impressions to users who haven't actually been to their site. So one thing that I've noticed definitely is in this time, a lot of people see this channel along with PPC. Say, for example, if they find they're getting great traction with PPC, they'll also launch a bit of this kind of display side of things or lookalike campaigns with the PPC. It's just another way to get in front of potential new users. And when you put that together with PPC, they work really well together. But that's definitely a way a lot of brokers for us have kind of come and said, okay, we want to also put money into this channel as well as PPC because now is a good time to grow. And obviously, as I said, the PPC is so competitive right now, even more so than ever, which it already has been. So yeah, that's one thing that I've seen anyway from my side.
I think we've seen like a.
I mean, what have you kind of seen over the last? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I think there's some perception that PPC, some of the search campaigns are becoming more expensive, relatively, overall, and there's also some kind of saturation. Like, there's not that many, like in forex. Like when you look at other industries, keywords to bid on or valuable keywords to bid on. So it kind of makes sense if you're going to increase your budget to increase the way your reach as well. How are you putting your message out there? One of the interesting things that I've seen is I'm also working with gaming companies, companies that are doing a casino, sport, poker, bingo. Poker and bingo saw a big increase. Sport obviously saw a complete disaster with nothing to do other than to try and pivot into esports. Yeah. Which some companies did. They pivoted a little bit into esports, but as soon as the Bundesliga came back in, everything went back to normal. So I think that there's got to be some caution here, like to understand that, you know, like when things start to open up again, like, you know, how these trends are going to continue, or whether people are, you know, like humanity really is, like forgets really fast and goes back into old habits, or whether they actually like use this as a platform to boost off and, you know, get stronger and bigger, which is probably the way I would suggest.
Well, look, I think we can clearly see that how people, online users, view content now is very different to pre-pandemic. And I mean, I'm sure that Charlotte and also llan will have comments on that.
Right, for sure. I mean, I think the really interesting thing that came out of all of this was the demand that we got from the brokers that we're working with for the kind of content that they needed. Because, you know, we're used to providing educational content to brokers, and it's, you know, what are candlesticks, what is a pip, what are spreads? We all know about this, we all provide this kind of content. But what really came about from the pandemic is relatable, actionable content that people need right now, that will actually help them and that's making trading relevant. So for example, we all watched what happened with the oil situation, when oil literally just crashed down to the floor, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, the barrel's worth more than the oil? What the hell is going on with this? But, you know, traders wanted to know about this, and they wanted to know, do we trade? Should we be trading oil? Should we be trading stocks on oil? And similarly for things like share CFDs on like Tesla, for example. So we were asked to produce a lot of content with keywords that was hitting very relatable, very actionable content for brokers. And I think this is kind of the direction that we're sticking with.
And llan, speaking of actionable content, I know that Autochartist have an amazing social tool. Maybe you can go into a little bit of detail about that and what you saw over the last few months.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think we'll talk about tools and other things maybe a little later. I can defer that, but totally agree with what Charlotte was saying about actionable content. I can go into a bit of details about the kind of content that was really being used a lot from what I see on social media. But I do know, Laoura, that you've got this booked as a little topic of conversation for later on, so I might hold off on that. I think I do at this point want to highlight the fact that although marketing spend is dramatically up, you know, as Panos and Marc pointed out, I am concerned about whether this is really to mitigate the massive loss of customers that happened on the other side, right? So obviously with increased volatility, there's increased trade, increased revenue. However, we also at Autochartist, we're not only involved on the content side, we're also involved a lot on the trading side. And we have seen brokers suffering massively from losses. Okay, from losses, meaning customer losses, right? Because people blow up their accounts very quickly in highly volatile markets. And so I think that a lot of the spend in the marketing space and advertising spend is actually as a result of massive client losses and the need to replace those client losses with new client acquisitions, right? So I think there's two aspects to why brokers are spending that much money.
So just to clarify, have marketing spends been increased over the last 3 months, or have they actually decreased over the last 3 months?
No, marketing spend has definitely increased. But what I'm trying to say is that it's increased not only as a function of just people being more active online, but also because as traders are coming into the market, they're blowing up a lot quicker, right? So the average lifespan of a trader in the FX market was 6 months. Now it's down to about 2.5, 3 months, right? And so the brokers are under massive pressure to replace those traders with new traders, right? And so the spend increases, right? They're doing the right thing, right? You don't just sit back and let the problem hit you, right? So they are doing the right thing by increasing their spend. But I'm saying it's the increasing spend is not only because of all COVID and everything, it's also because they're losing customers on the back end at a really rapid pace.
So I mean, from a strategic perspective, how do you think that these brokers are going to be investing in their marketing over the next 3 months? Maybe Panos, can you comment a little bit on that for us?
So as we mentioned before, marketing spend started to increase in March, continued in April and May. And in the past couple of weeks, we have seen a bit of fatigue. So we've seen a slight slowdown in marketing budgets. And so I don't know if this is an indicator what will follow for the entire of Q3, because it also depends on market condition and the volatility. But it seems that brokers did really well in terms of acquisition the past 2 to 3 months. And now there's not much appetite to be that aggressive and with their marketing. But this could easily change depending on the marketing, on the market conditions.
One of the things that we saw, sorry, Laura, one of the things that we noticed is in the last few weeks, where everything was on pause, new campaigns had been paused. That is one of the things that we noticed, that they were not kind of going ahead with launching new products or services. We've had a lot of inquiries in the last few weeks about, okay, we're ready to talk about September. So I do get a feel that the confidence is up, maybe because, as Panos said, they did quite well. They weathered the storm quite well, and I think it's bolstered their confidence.
Yeah, I would agree. But just with regards to the actual campaigns that were working and the ones that didn't work over the last 3 months, maybe one of you can shed some light on that. Maybe Nicc, you can give us some comments on that.
I've been doing a lot of the B2B side as well. Basically, the people who are willing to invest and push forward have seen results. The people who scaled back saw negative results. I mean, basically, when you think about like what people were looking for, they were looking for somehow to use the time that they had effectively. So I mean, basically, it was down to the experience that they received at the end that ultimately determined like how successful it was going to be like in the long term. I mean, if someone came in and lost everything like in the first few seconds of coming in, and that kind of like snowballed out. There is such thing as reputation and brand reputation, like online, and people do read what other people have said, and social media in particular was extremely active during COVID. One of the big fears that came out from gaming, and I think it's one of the fears that we should bear in mind here, is that people were complaining that the gaming operators were taking money that people didn't have. and they were behaving irresponsibly. Now, right now, the UK government, for example, it's like a political thing, like to go hammer the gaming industry, like time and time and again. It's a way of getting like brownie points and extra votes at the ballot box. And the last thing we want as an industry, like as far as financial trading, is to go into the same block and box as that, and being seen to be irresponsible.
Right. I think also, just to echo what Nicc said, people were so hypersensitive, of course, on social media. They were scrutinizing every single campaign that anybody did. If you hashtag coronavirus, hashtag COVID-19, everybody's like, why are you using it to exploit this, to sell your products? So I think, people had to be really, really careful, and they had to be seen to be doing campaigns that were actually relatable and benefiting people who were following them. It wasn't a good time to be using all of this to kind of get some sales, get some traders, which of course, this is what brokers want, but they did.
And
they
did.
And
I know it sounds very cold to say, but rightly so. There's an opportunity where there's a lot of trading volatility.
Right.
So companies who, that is their business model, is in order to increase volumes and also
right.
conversions. But
I think that if you don't mind, I just want to say something around that. Is that Charlotte did mention the increased demand for actionable kind of content. Of course, we're seeing that at Autochartist too, but what we are seeing on the other side of it, though, is that some brokers are requesting a lot of risk management content.
Yes, agreed.
So they are seeing the upcoming issue, right, about traders losing their money, and to Nick's point about people coming in, losing their cash in a matter of a few seconds or a few minutes, walking away, giving the whole industry a bad rep. And I do think that some brokers are taking the bull by the horns and saying, well, okay, risk management is actually an angle for us to go in. What kind of risk management and risk management tools and risk management services or content can we put out there to show that we actually care about the longevity of the customer?
Definitely. Yeah.
And
I would agree.
Laura, I know just before we move on there, I just had a point to make on kind of, you mentioned like what the next 3 months might look like. Just from my point of view, what I've seen, and it's kind of what the guys have spoke about, everybody who went hard in the last 3 months at their marketing activity tended to do well. They saw it as an opportunity, and I think every broker who did that was obviously made the right call. You got to make the most of the opportunity that's out there. Also, I kind of have spoken to a lot of people, and I think a lot of them foresee that the next kind of 9 months or 6 months might get very tricky in terms of when the inevitably a recession hits. So over the next 3 months, what I think in terms of trends is that in the last 3 months, what we might have seen is a massive effort to acquire as many customers as they can in that period of time, be it through PPC, be it through prospecting and stuff like that. Whereas what I think might be more relevant over the coming 4 to 5 months and beyond is how do we maximize the lifetime value of our current customer base? Because we have these customers now, it's going to be tough to get new customers in these uncertain times. So what we need to do is look after these customers. And I think that the clients who will do the best out of this are the ones who didn't burn insurance clients or didn't kind of get them in and get them out. It's the ones that managed to maintain clients, give them good offers and stuff like that. So just from a display marketing and a digital point of view, I think in the next 3 months, what I expect to see is somewhat of a slowdown, as Charlotte discussed, Panos discussed, has already been happening. But definitely, I think there'll be a big focus on maximizing the lifetime value of the existing customers, if that makes sense.
I think there's going to be another issue. Like if you think about like every economy around the world, a lot of the economies offered like some kind of break. So you didn't have to pay your mortgage for X amount of months. Now, I know that these are going to start hitting home around June, July, August, depending on where you live. When people suddenly start having to pay like that amount of money back again, there's going to be like a serious issue with economies at home. Like how are you going to pay your bills and how are you going to get through, especially when you have a whole of income from not earning money during Corona, or you've been laid off, or whatever the situation is going to be. And that's going to be the challenge. And the thing that changed, the thing that people started to look at, and the thing that people are going to have to carry on doing is, as Charlotte said, and as Llan has been saying, is that level of honesty and integrity. And I think it's if you go in with that message that, you know, you're not just there to screw someone, you're there to you're there for them, with them, and honest, and you're a real person. Even if you make mistakes, it's actually not a bad thing to make a mistake right now as a company, and be able to address that mistake, because people are looking for that real connection. That's where it's going to be important.
Retention, yeah. And sorry, can I just remind any attendees on our session here to please send through their questions, because we will take a few minutes at the end to answer them with all panelists. But yes, Nick, I totally agree. I think we're not only looking at the kind of conversion of these clients, and that touches on what llan said earlier, the LTV, lifetime value of our clients is getting far more reduced. So from a marketing perspective, what kind of retention strategies can we push in place to actually keep these guys with us a little bit longer?
I want to comment on this one, because you know, as we know in the industry, you look at the NFA stats or anything, we know basically everyone loses all their money, and there is one inevitable result. The only question is which broker is going to take the leap first, and maybe this whole thing that's happened with COVID and the massive customer churn we're seeing, maybe this is the final straw in getting brokers to finally push managed products. So I suspect, again, this is only a suspicion, that there's a lot of brokers out there, and I'm sure the big ones, the smart ones, are putting together managed products to retain customers, right? So we know you've lost your cash. You want to be in FX because it's good to be part of good to have currencies as part of your portfolio. Let us manage your money for you. And I'm not talking about the get rich quick scams out there and the robots. I'm talking about genuine managed products where you're earning kind of your risk-free rate plus a few percent per annum, right? And making FX a real investable asset class, right? Which it currently isn't right now. It's a speculative asset class. So I think that I suspect you might see a bit of this kind of managed products being marketed.
Yeah. Okay. And tell me this, we just got a question through from Marc from Bloomberg, with regards to actually, I mean, is branding still an important factor within marketing strategies? I mean, how about Panos? Can you shed some light on that first, please?
I mean,
can you hear me?
Marketing is always an important factor.
But branding specifically, is branding as
branding, yeah. So branding has always been important. So what we've seen from Google's side is that watch time on YouTube has increased significantly as people stay home and consume more online video. And it is the case that many brokers have found valuable inventory and valuable audience to target and improve or get through their message and grow their brands. So from our side, branding has always been very important, but we did see some more intense video advertising during the past couple of months.
You did. Is that not in contradiction to what Marc said now from a retargeting perspective?
No, so just to jump in there, like, so in the past couple of months, we've seen the exact same as Panos said. Like, the branding has been huge in the past few months. What I'm saying is, looking forward, I think that there might be a bigger focus on the maximum lifetime value of the current customers, because it might become very difficult to acquire. So
no, sorry, I think Panos, sorry to cut you off there. Panos mentioned about video.
Yeah, so I'd fully agree there. So from our side, I think, as he mentioned, Panos mentioned, YouTube has been huge for us from an ad creation point of view and a brand awareness. Like, HTML5 and video inventory has also been huge because they're so important in terms of getting a client's brand out there. Very rarely do clients now just launch with us in terms of just launching a set of static ads, because they know if they're showing a new potential client their brand, they want it to come across in the most appealing way possible. So I'm just hope I'm answering your part correctly, Laura. What we've seen is obviously in the past while how branding has been so important, but the way clients are branding, to touch on Marc's question, is it's a lot more interactive. It's not just a static banner saying trade with us today. All of the best brokers, they're putting out really good video content. I'm sure you guys can barely go to, every time I go to YouTube now, I'm targeted by an ad from a trading company trying to get me to come on board, and they're really well-made ads. And it's the same in terms of video inventory. We have a lot of video inventory, HTML5 ads. So from a brand awareness point of view, I think it's absolutely massive still. But as I said, I foresee in the next few months, it will still remain big, but maybe not as big as it was in the past kind of 2 months or so.
Just to jump in there on the branding thing, because I think what's really, really important is people look to brands during the pandemic for how they would behave. And this is all part of branding, because you are how you behave online with your customers. This all adds up to the brand. And so what we saw is a lot of brands who were doing really awesome stuff on social media that echoed their brand. So an example of that, albeit not in the finance sector, was IKEA, who did a nice little branding thing on how to put together meatballs for people who couldn't get to the store and actually buy them, you know, this favorite thing. That was so on brand for them, and the style that they used, the content that they used, everything. Even if it didn't say IKEA, you would have known that that was IKEA. And we saw that from some of the finance companies as well, and that was very smart and necessary.
I really agree. Actually, I think over the last few months, the bigger companies with big brands who did widely speak about and directly give out messages around the COVID-19 and coronavirus, and I think Pornhub were hilarious.
Yes, they were.
Over that time. Absolutely. I'm not sure if anyone saw the ads, but you should definitely look them up. What I would say is I just want to touch back a little bit with regards to content and talking about how we view content and looking at it in an interesting approach. Are we all becoming millennials in how we view content? Because yes, brand is so important now, and not only is it so important, but I believe online users are really looking for credibility in the messages and the type of content that they're consuming. We also, our frequency of absorbing content has increased massively, and obviously that's from people being at home and our usage of social media. So I think there was a 61% increase across the board. So does this mean that, are we all becoming millennials? I mean, has that happened? Because I know that a lot of the sports industry for many years have kind of completely disregarded millennials as an audience to target. So, I mean, what are we seeing with campaigns now?
I think, sorry, Nick, I think the really interesting thing is people still think of millennials as being really young. But actually, you know, they're approaching 40 on the upper end of the millennial side. So I guess we're now talking about the younger millennials and the next generation down. But what you said, definitely in terms of people looking for authenticity, that's a huge, huge thing with the younger generation, because people are fact checking now. People want to know the source of the information. Is it correct? Is it fake news? Is it yet more fake news that we're seeing on our social media sites? You better be right about the content that you're putting out. And you also need to get to the point very, very quickly, because, you know, there is a lot of content out there. There's a lot of good content out there, to be honest. So yours needs to be really good, and it needs to be kind of punchy. It needs to be informative, relevant, because, you know, if you're just going to waffle on for like 1,500 words, you know, there's not that many people have time for that.
And you know, yes, I was going to actually mention you, llan. So with regards to the natural language generator of content, because obviously your company is delivering content, and also the frequency of the content needs to be delivered to a number of different brokers all at the same time. So how does that actually stay on brand for a broker, still be interesting for the audience, and still have the correct message delivered?
Right. Yeah. So I see. I think there's two aspects to this. I think the one aspect is the delivery mechanism, and the other aspect is the actual content itself. Right. So From a delivery mechanism, I think that brokers like Plus 500 have really changed the gold standard in terms of marketing. Everything there is automated. Every single broker in the world wants to be like Plus 500 to automate, right? And so that's obviously what we try to do as a company, and the services we try to provide to our broker, to Autochartist broker customers. I think also interesting enough though is the content itself, right? So the days of produce once and just distribute everywhere are gone, and I'm sure that Panos will tell you and Marc will tell you that you get penalized from an SEO perspective. So a lot of the requests that we're getting right now at Autochartist side from a content side is uniqueness, and so this is where we're kind of following the technology trends. Recently, you've seen Microsoft scrap all human journalists on their website. Everything is going AI. I'd like to think we're on the trend of that. So we're obviously on the same direction. All the content we produce is all AI driven, natural language generation type, very funky technology. But I think though I'm seeing two very distinct types of content that people are consuming. So we have a lot of for the acquisition side of the business. We're seeing a lot of need for this kind of, I call it headline grabbing content, like Charlotte was saying, oil drops massively and all that kind of headline grabbing stuff. But then many of our brokers use that kind of content from us to acquire customers. But interestingly enough, in the long term, after a month or two being at the broker, they are no longer consuming that kind of headline grabbing content. Brokers actually requiring a lot more technical content from us. And so there's this real divergence between the kind of content that brokers are seeing working well in the market between acquisition versus retention, right? So when you're looking at brokers that are retargeting existing customers, to Marc's point earlier, on their Facebook groups or through Facebook Messenger or whatever the mechanism is, or Google retargeting, they're actually starting to demand more technical and in-depth content, right? Assuming that the person has already kind of, let's say, dipped their foot in the water already, right? So there are these two divergent types of content.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I fully agree with that. That was one of the points that I'd kind of noted down. Like, I think one thing that brokers need to be very careful of now, or just be cognizant of, is that there's two distinct types of brokers typically now. You have those individuals in the past 2 months who just kind of tried to get on the bandwagon and try to make money quick or whatever, who don't really know much about trading, don't know how to trade. But on the other side, you have to remember a huge amount of their most valuable clients are people who are probably trading before. So you need to be very careful in terms of what content, first of all, you're putting out there, and in terms of the ads you're serving. One thing I notice is that, like, webinars, blogs, stuff like this is incredibly important for them longer term traders, the ones who are ultimately most valuable, because they don't need to know the basics about stocks going up and down. Like, they do that research themselves. So the more we've seen, the better performing brokers, and I'm sure llan will agree, are the ones who are putting time into separating, okay, we've two distinct types of brokers here. We've the kind of the seasoned campaign or seasoned pros, so be it, or ones who are experienced and we're trading long before this. And then we've a new batch of traders who we need to give kind of more basic content to, but that's actually going to really help them out in terms of spending more. So it's going to be interesting to see how brokers do that in the coming months.
Yeah,
I think that it's important to. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Nick. I've got one more comment.
I was going to say, like, I think on the point of thinking like a millennial. Now we've all turned into millennials. Millennials look for value, values, and challenge. Okay, so they're looking for value for their time and their money. Once they have that value, then they're willing to actually spend that time and that money. They're looking for value, so they're looking for the people that they're investing their time and their money in to actually have the values and the integrity to stand up to what they believe in. They're looking for a challenge, which means they're looking for something like difficult. They're looking to overcome some kind of obstacle, some kind of competition, some kind of drive to be able to like master a skill. So I think that comes into what llan was kind of like saying, and that's where you see the logical flow starting to happen, and you see the consumption of content changing over time. Because it's, you know, if you imagine like you know, and I'm taking this to the extreme on the lower end, and Charlotte, you're absolutely right. The older guys are like around their 40s now, but the younger guys are coming out of like maybe even an e-gaming like kind of background. You know, they've learned really complex games and social interaction on a difficult platform, you know, and the more challenging the game became, the more they were into it. So the harder and more difficult that game was. And for many facts, like investing in some kind of volatile market or some kind of market that's shifting and changing, you know, and trying to figure out what the next move is going to be, that's the challenge. That's more interesting than making even a profit. You know, it's to overcome that. And if you're pushing that kind of like content and direction, that's where you're grabbing people, you know, and even the older guys like me, I mean, I'm positively ancient, you know, I've started to think in that kind of way, you know, like, cause this is what I want, you know, this is the kind of the content I want to consume. I want to be challenged. I want to spend my time. I don't want to like lose my time.
So people are valuing their time a lot more.
I think talking just briefly about the demographic shift, because that's a really interesting point about the millennials and the boomers and all of this, is that we have to understand that people are using different platforms, not only based on their age, but based on their interests. And a lot of the sort of younger generation underneath the millennials, they don't even have Facebook. They don't even have Facebook on their phones. They're using Instagram, they're using TikTok, maybe Snapchat. But, you know, it depends. If the brokers are looking to target these younger ones, they have to broaden out their strategy. And we're talking about different content in different channels for different people. And, you know, more than ever, the boomers are joining Facebook in their droves, which I'm not sure Facebook is thrilled about, but it is happening. And, you know, the younger ones are leaving or not joining. So it's something as marketers that we do need to keep in mind.
I do think that I'm across the board, whether you're talking about Gen Z, millennials, or older folks, and Nicc, you're not the only bald one in this presentation today, so not the only ancient one, but across the board, we're seeing less and less consumption of content over 100 words. 100 to 150 words is it. People just want a picture, and they want to make it, and they want to take action. That's the first point that we're seeing from our side. Again, it's about experiences. The second thing is that we do have to acknowledge a massive challenge that the brokers are facing, and the challenge is that if you just Google trading systems, there is so much noise out there, right? So many scams, so many get-rich-quick schemes. You know, we have to just acknowledge that the brokers' marketing teams really have a hard time in getting above that noise level, right? Because honestly, put yourself in your situation. Would you rather do it yourself, or would you rather follow someone and become an instant millionaire by next month, right? I think it's a real challenge, and I am not sure that the community has yet figured out how to get rid of that challenge, other than through regulation, obviously.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, even speaking from a HR perspective, and how these teams are actually going to manage delivering more specific content and more frequently. Now we're also looking at employees being decentralized. So this actually opens up a lot of opportunities for brokers to possibly hire marketing teams from abroad, or marketing CMOs from abroad, that they may not have considered in the past, because they would have wanted their CMO to be sitting with them in the office. How do you think that's going to affect marketing as a whole going forward? I mean, do we think that we're going to go back to more traditional senses, or are we going to start using more decentralized marketing teams or agencies in order to deliver and faster and more specific content?
I think, Laura, your point is really, really good, because, you know, we've been in the FX sector for a long time. And, you know, I can remember even going back sort of 8 years and saying, why aren't you using these tools? They will allow us to work remotely if someone's away or whatever. And they're like, no, you know, everybody has to be in the office. But of course now, for things like compliance approval on content, we've been encouraging clients to use tools online like Basecamp, like Trello, like Agora Pulse for social media management, for example, where basically we can get approvals through the apps, and everybody's connected, everybody's a member, you can get approval instantly, and it's not a case of like, let's send an email, let's wait for this person to come back, let's be working in such a disorganized way. I would really hope, in answer to your question, that they continue to start going forward in this way. They have to, surely.
Yeah.
I think
And tell me, so I'd like to hear a little bit more from a statistical point of view, and what markets have we seen buzzing at the moment with regards to the FX industry? Maybe, Panos, can you shed a little light on that? You're very quiet.
No, I think all the comments are valuable, and I'm happy to learn from the panelists. So in the past 3 months, we haven't really seen any market declining. So some markets, have been growing faster than others. So I'll give you an example. For example, in commodities in India have skyrocketed because of we saw a lot of traction and searches around gold price and gold trading. In Europe, we saw stocks and oil searches going off the roof. So it depends on the market and it depends on the asset class. But overall, the trend that we saw mainly in Europe was about stocks, Middle East was around oil, and Asia was across the board. So stocks did well, also FX, so a lot of momentum. So like making any prediction in the next 6 to 9 months would be kind of difficult. But I do believe that the markets that were growing a lot before COVID will continue to grow. Will continue to grow. These are Southeast Asian countries, some African countries, or MENA. We've seen that Europe in the past 18 months is a bit saturated, but still, in the past 3 months we did see a lot of growth in Europe as well. But back to my initial point, I do believe that countries that were growing before COVID will continue to grow in the next few months as well.
Looks like we all need to buy some Google stock because everyone's advertising, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with Panos there 100%. I think we saw trends pre-COVID that have just basically skyrocketed as COVID hit. So MENA for us, for example, has been massive, and so has Asia, which I think everyone knows about. But also LATAM, we've seen some countries go there. If you think about it, like a lot of the brokers who are based in Europe or whatever might not necessarily have traditionally focused on these regions. Some obviously do. But definitely since COVID, I think it's just accelerated a lot because they're saying, okay, now these are markets that they plan to grow into anyway. And now that the push obviously from COVID, where they know they can get customers probably at a cheaper rate who are of a higher interest, we've seen kind of a lot of investment go in towards serving new ads to new users in both MENA, obviously Asia, but as I said as well, LATAM has actually been one that we hadn't really seen a huge amount of traction before, where brokers a lot of them based out of Cyprus and the UK have said, okay, let's just test the waters there, let's get some ads out there. And the last thing then is also there's some markets that maybe are unregulated, or markets that, for example, they find it difficult to serve ads through certain networks and stuff like that. So a lot of clients have said to us, like, can you get ads away in these regions? So that's also something that's of interest that we've been kind of getting queries about. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's in line with what Panos has said. There's kind of 3 or 4 regions that are definitely growing pretty quickly.
Okay,
I want to say that the one thing is, Laura, you were asking the point about the decentralization of staff. Again, Autochartist itself is more on the content production side rather than the actual marketing and the distribution side. But I can tell you from the content production side, brokers are, brokers are admitting some of their weaknesses and deficiencies because let's just say you have a person that's seeing this oil spike or downward or whatever it is, wanting to trade oil, but they don't they've never traded oil before. The broker has never been a traditional oil trading provider, right? They do have it on their trading platform, but they don't have any content generation capabilities, right? So they don't have an oil analyst on board. And then so we're seeing on the content production side, brokers who don't have the knowledge in certain asset classes come to us and say, hey, okay, we're very strong on the stock side. Can you augment our stocks content with oil content, or can you augment our content with some indices stuff which our traders are suddenly trading, and we've never traded before, right? So on the content production side, we're not seeing a decentralization. Well, of course, it's a skewed view, right? Because I'm a third party, but I'm seeing a lot of outsourcing going on.
Yes, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I would also say, on one last point on that kind of decentralized working, I would say that we've definitely seen a shift between people being very, very excited to jump on Zoom calls and jump on webinars and get on all this online stuff, to now complete tech fatigue. I don't think it's permanent, but I think, you know, when we've got all of these brokers and they're planning summer webinars, summer Zoom calls, I think people don't want to do that right now. I think when people can go out, they're going to want to go out, and then they're going to return to it later. But we've definitely seen like a tech fatigue going on lately.
But
I've definitely seen the opposite. I've definitely seen like an increase of interest, like in hiring like my services, and we completely outsourced. Like there's no one who sits in any office other than maybe like for half a day, like a month, like to go through numbers, and even that's gone online.
Sure, I mean talking to an agency, yes, yeah, but not.
It's come down to the fact that, like, you know, a lot of companies outside like Forex, in particular, let go of their marketing teams first. You know, and that's just a matter of fact. And now that they're going back to work, they're not necessarily hiring back their marketing teams in whole or in part. So we're definitely plugging a lot of gaps, you know, that they don't need to do. And it's more cost effective to, you know, to use someone like on the amount of hours that you need, rather than the full scope of paying someone and paying for their licenses and putting them in an office. And we're definitely seeing like a huge increase in, you know, in that. And we're actually seeing, like, funnily enough, the stronger companies like the Forex companies and, you know, and some of the gaming companies who did really well, like starting to think in the same kind of way, to say, like, I'm gonna stop like some of my internal, because I actually don't need it. I've actually learned to cope with other functions externally, and maybe it's time like to start thinking about like outsourcing small parts, especially like considering the amount of work that goes into like segmentation, and the amount of work that goes into actually getting enough content and enough like messaging out there to so many different like areas, and in such a high frequency. It's just impossible to take everything on in-house, you know?
Yeah, I think on Nick's point there, just unconscious of time, but I'll keep it really quick. I think that's fully aligned with what we're seeing. We've had so many brokers now, maybe not the biggest ones, but the definitely the mid-sized ones, who just kind of want to see us as an extension on their marketing team. So before, a lot of them like had someone to run their display campaigns, for example. Whereas now they're saying to me, Marc, okay, I'm going to help you set this up, but once it's live, obviously we give them an account manager and stuff like that. But they're saying, can you just send us a weekly report, and I'm basically going to see you as an extension on my team. Whereas before, what they would have had is maybe 2 people running the campaigns, and we just sat back. So I think it's what Nick's saying. They're really relying on us to kind of fill that gap a lot more, as opposed to just having someone who's specifically their sole requirement is to run a certain campaign.
I'm going to have to stop you all there, because I want firstly to ask all participants in attendees of this panel to send us all your questions, because I have one more question for all the panelists, and then I want to answer some questions. So please do send us everything. You've got some very interesting panelists here who are ready to answer. So I just want to run through in as briefly as possible, if you can, each of you tell me, what do you think the future holds? And just summarize what you think the future holds for marketing in our industry, and what will be the most effective approach for a broker that you could advise them from each of your roles. Maybe start with yourself, Charlotte.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in terms of us, because we focus on organic, I would say, going back to my point earlier, relatable, actionable content that's relevant. So we're talking about how people are spending stimulus checks, how people can actually use the money, what people can do, be helpful, be relatable. And my other tip would be put your CEO on TikTok because it's fun.
Aha, great. I would love to see that.
We do.
Panos, what do you have to tell us?
Yeah, so understanding audiences and targeting audiences in a very effective way and personalizing messages based on this audience would be key. Also, based on my experience, most of the brokers, they're really good at using search. And as we mentioned before, search in some markets is becoming more competitive. So into the future, they would need to find more inventory and to target, to find new marketing channels to talk to their audience. And for us, we're seeing a very strong momentum with YouTube and apps. So for the future, I do believe these two areas of video and promotion of apps will be significant and will play a key role for the success of brokers.
Thank you. Llan?
I think the key from a content production side is automation. I think that brokers are going to want to save costs. I think that's going to be key for the brokers going forward. However, you know, we're all wondering about what's going to happen in the future of the market. Is this just a blip, this massive blip? I think gamblers and speculators always find money to spend. So I think there's only a positive growth going forward for the FX industry.
Brilliant. Marc?
Yeah, I fully agree with, I think the marketers need to be a bit more, well, certain ones need to be a bit more strategic with their content. As the guys mentioned, keep it simple, but keep it really relevant. I think similar to what Panos was saying about video being incredibly important and in-app stuff, from my side, other channels other than PPC, for example, like brand awareness, prospecting, lookalike campaigns, these are all really interesting ways you can grow out your audience into new inventory sources and grow your user base. So I think that's something to really keep an eye on. We put together an AdRoll an article on this, so like new ways to grow. So if anyone wants to connect and share that, I'm happy to. So, but I think Panos is spot on. There's 2 or 3 areas I think with the in-app, I suppose the brand awareness as well as the PPC, and then yeah, keeping messages relevant is what I think I'm going to really be keeping an eye on.
Brilliant. And Nicc, tell us.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree with the way everyone said, but I think I'm going to take a slightly different tangent. I think like looking forward, we're going to be looking at, looking at your brand, how you're positioning your brand and how you're presenting your brand. And a lot of it's going to come from the micro and nano influencers as brand ambassadors. So, it's not necessarily going to be, getting Quentin Tarantino to be your brand ambassador for your brokerage, but it's going to be more like the guy on the ground who people actually trust and and seem to be genuine. I think along with that, there are going to be pressures put on the regulators, like to make sure we're safeguarding the consumer in the long run, and I think that's going to be really important as as part of the messaging that's going out and the way it's going out and what's being said and who's talking on your behalf. So like the affiliates. We should see a lot more pressure being added to affiliates, like to present the brand in the right way, and give good traffic back. And a lot of it's going to be again on social media is going to become more and more important, and understanding your social media and which channels are working and their frequency. I mean, if you're not posting frequently enough on Twitter, you might as well forget like having a Twitter account, for example. If you're tweeting like TikTok content on Facebook, you've got it completely wrong, and it's going to be understanding like how you get your message to the right segment in the right place at the right time, and the consistency in what you're saying, even when you like segmenting, there is still a core.
Okay. So just to move it on to Q&A, we have about 5 minutes left, so sadly we won't be able to answer everything. We have a question here that says, give us an example of some really good marketing campaigns in the finance industry over the last 3 months? Can somebody shed some light?
That they were actually going to give their clients a rebate of the amount that they didn't spend on their car insurance because they weren't out on the roads.
I love it.
And I thought that was so smart, and they took it across all of their channels. They really engaged in sort of community management, engaged with the audience. And, you know, I mean, it was 110 million in total that they gave away. That only actually amounted to a £25 refund to each customer, but it didn't matter. It was such a huge thing, and people loved it, and I loved it too.
That is cool. I like that. So, and then with regards to touching on conversion rates, how conversion rates have been effective with collaborative software such as Slack or Medium for advertising. So, I mean, have these kinds of channels been effective over the past 3 months for conversion? Anyone have any comments on that?
I think I've seen, like, from I mean, one of my clients is on the B2B side, and their CRM started seeing uptakes in definitely collaborative, like, software in the background, like between the teams, to help improve the conversion rates. So I mean, other than having the traders' information like at hand, they could trigger from within the CRM video conferences, for example, between their team members, and they were also automatically adapting scripts on the fly, like based on keyword searches and not keyword searches, keyword spotting software. So I think that's where the technology, that's where I've definitely seen the technology make a huge difference on the conversion side. Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Medium as well, just to jump in on that, because, you know, they've got these trending topics on there, like coronavirus, COVID, Forex. You know, if you're not on Medium putting out content, I think it's a mistake. We've been putting out a lot of content like 5 airline stocks you want to watch this month and this kind of stuff, and we've had a really good pickup rate on those. So definitely big up to Medium.
And I mean, Medium is a channel that's quite difficult for brokers to manage by themselves. You know, it's very time consuming. So that might be where agencies or outsourced marketing, decentralized marketing teams can help. Just another question there. It's kind of talking about how a new broker can start off with their marketing, and it's talking about 400k budget. But I would slightly change that question and ask, are brokers really getting the same bang for their buck as pre-COVID that they would be now and going forward?
I think it depends. For me, I think it depends on the channel that they're trying to use. I think what I've seen is certain brokers who try and come in at the new stage are coming in at an incredibly competitive time, and I think they see that. What I'd always recommend to brokers is, if they're going to come in at this time, that if they're going to invest in a new channel, to do it right from the start. So, for example, if they're going to run brand awareness or kind of prospecting or PPC campaigns, don't kind of just dip your toe in the water, because you're basically throwing money away. Like, you need to spend enough to actually create some sort of brand that you can build upon. And what I have seen is that a lot of brokers have come to us and they said they just can't really compete necessarily with the PPC. So they're doing kind of new campaigns with Google, where they might be doing some lookalike or similar audiences campaigns, and they do similar with us. So yeah, that's one thing that I've kind of seen, is that just be a bit more inventive in your typical strategy, and make sure you commit fully to what it is. Don't just dip your toe in the water, because you just won't have an impact. Yeah,
commit to your marketing, basically.
Yeah.
I think that's where the segmentation comes in as well. I mean, it's better to invest like heavily in a good segment than try and like spread your message too thin with a small budget.
Definitely. And I mean, strategy is absolutely key. Both Marc and Nicc said it. Strategy is key. There's no point in spending any money if you don't have a strategy first. You're just, aiming in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And I mean, that actually answers one of the questions here with regards to where you would gain the most value from your content. I think it's really down to specification, segmentation, and frequency. You know, kind of answered that. So with regards to what hasn't worked over the past few months, yes, we talk about influencers, probably looking at that in the future and looking at that as affiliates, etc. But I guess people kind of shied away from that, maybe. Is that right to say, over the last 3 months?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, influencer marketing was supposed to be 9.2 billion this year. That was the predicted spend. But then, you know, we had celebrities, you know, doing stupid things, singing Imagine, and, you know, Madonna in a rose petal bath and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's really pulled people back on, you know, who even are influencers, and exactly what Nicc said earlier. We should be looking at useful micro influencers, people who are traders, people who are influential in the Forex and finance sector.
I certainly don't think that the influencer market is dead at all.
No.
I think, to Charlotte's point, you know, just the right influencer is very important. But I think that I mean, all I have to do is look at my my little kids. They talk about their little YouTube heroes, you know, like they're gods, right? So I think, you know, when the young generation is growing up being influenced by these influencers, I think they're accustomed to that, and so I think that is definitely a growing segment. But I think, to Charlotte's point, definitely the correct influencer is super important.
Yeah, my 2 cents is that influencers do have large audiences. It depends on the country, of course, and the type of the influencer, but they also have very loyal audiences. So from our side, yeah, we see our YouTube creators activity growing and subscriptions going up in their channels. So this is definitely a segment we see playing a very important role in the future.
And I'm so sad. I would love to stay on for another hour, but that's our time is up. But I'd like to thank all of you individually for entertaining our audience and entertaining me and providing a lot of insight and information for all of us. So yeah, I mean, stay online for the expo, and thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.